Then, well, hey, I'd love to hear what do you remember from last time, or what things, doesn't have to be a specific, idea, but what things are you thinking from our previous conversations?
Hmm.
Ideas or questions?
Yeah. Remember we spoke about, well, it was a long time ago, huh? Looks like. Um, yeah, we spoke about becoming more friends with the people around us,
Yep.
going from being what's
Acquaintance.
it
Acquaintance to friend, yes.
to
Mm.
Well, I sent you after that call, I sent you a little tool to look at or to consider. I'd encourage you. You remember seeing something like this? This is what our church, this is what our church here is using. I don't know if you can see it,
Mhm. Okay.
but
Contact
yeah, but
lens.
I sent you a example of this. It's called 5 for 5. It's just the idea that every person in your church would identify 5 lost people,
Mm-hmm.
neighbors, co-workers, somebody in their life, but 5 people. And then there's 5 practical ways to become better friends with them. Basically, to pray for them consistently, um, contact them just to let them know you're thinking about them. How are you doing? How's your job going? So you're in regular contact. You're trying to bless them in some way each month. You're inviting them to something, coffee, a party, a meal, a sporting event. Um, and then you're looking for opportunities to get to know their story and for them to hear more of your story,
Mm.
which we will talk about much on this call later. Okay, so this fits with what we will talk about later. But just having a simple little thing like this, you can put it in your car, you can put it on your refrigerator, you can put it in your bathroom. It helps people remember. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people get busy and they get distracted and they forget to be consistent, they forget to be intentional. And so this is just a simple little thing to remind, encourage, help focus, all of those things.
Mm.
So, but you could create your own that looks good and, you know, feels good for your people.
Mm.
So what do you think of that? What do you think of that? So the big idea again is consistency, intentionality.
Mm.
I think if the people in our church, if we don't do that well with people outside the church, our influence will be small. All relationships, even in your family, require consistency and intentionality. Being a good parent requires consistency, intentionality. Being a good husband or wife, consistency, intentionality. So it's just a relational thing. We need it in our families, we need it at work, we need it in all of our relationships. But it's interesting because many Christians struggle with this, big struggle, because I talk about this idea with churches all around the world. So it's true in America, it's true in Europe, it's true in Latin America, South America. It's true in South Africa. It's true everywhere. So um, it's something we must um, work on in our churches. So any thoughts or questions about that?
Yeah, well, I think we had last time we did the training with other people. Like one of the things that stuck with me was the idea of rejecting the notion of intentionality on when it comes to outreach, but also like discipleship or um, anything spiritually related. There was like kind of like a pushback against this idea of intentionality that somehow like it's like a killer of
Yeah.
where
So
is it
say
from.
yeah. So say more, Antonio. Why is that?
Yeah, I
Why?
mean, I can remember some comments here and there that I remember translating to you. So yeah, I mean, this idea of intentionality as being like almost a killer of the how would you say that in English? Like spontaneous
Spontaneous.
Spontaneous.
spontaneous act of love instead of like looks more like oh something I need to plan and you know I remember something like this, so that could be
Yeah.
like an
Yeah.
influence.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely wrong because I mean, for anything in life, you need to have intentionality.
Yeah.
Starting from when you're a kid, you need to do your homework at school and whatever. It's always about intentionality about those
Yeah.
things. Um,
Mm.
Danielo,
But
what do you think? Relational intentionality. Is there some resistance?
Uh,
There's
I
some
think
resistance to it in the culture. Where
I think that it's something that people have, but uh, they are not aware of that. And when it came to uh, share the gospel, it's kind of they maybe said, "Oh, I can't do that," but I can see that when they want to be a friend with someone or when they want to create a relation with someone, that they put all their effort.
yes.
If I want to be a friend with Antonio, for example, I would say, okay, Antonio, let's meet, even if he's in Salerno and I'm here in Castelvolturno. Well, let's
Yep.
meet in downtown Naples. Well,
Yep.
we are halfway. We can spend
Yep.
breakfast. We can have
Yep.
breakfast together. We can have lunch together. We can talk about this book or blah blah blah. So we create situation.
Good.
But I don't know, when it comes to share the gospel. It seems like oh no, I don't have any friends. I'm not good in creating a relationship, and it's not just a question of people that are introvert. Also, people who are particularly extrovert, when it came to share the gospel, they start to raise excuses.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But it's definitely something that everyone has. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, we're gonna talk about it more in a minute, about how we do that. But yeah, back to your example. If you want to build a deeper relationship with anyone, with a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, somebody in the church, somebody outside the
Mm-hmm.
church, it requires some intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
Without the consistency and intentionality, you don't go deeper. You can't build trust. So So connected to this idea, the reason why most Christians struggle in having spiritual conversations is because that's difficult in a relationship if you don't have trust.
Mm.
So say I'm a coworker of yours. We see each other every day at work. Okay. But we have not built trust. And so now you begin talking about something spiritual. It actually is strange for me. It's actually difficult because I don't know you. I don't know you. I don't trust you. And speaking about spiritual things are a deep personal thing. You know, it's not like talking about football, or it's not like talking about food, or you know, it's a different thing when you begin to talk about spiritual things, eternal things, God things, church things. That's a deeper conversation. So we cannot have those conversations with people that they receive as good news, because again, the gospel is good news. It's meant to be good news. We cannot do that if we do not have trust. Right? And so one of the big ideas we must help our people understand is we must build trust. We must build trust. Consistency, intentionality lead to trust. If we don't get trust, we don't get opportunity to speak about Jesus, or
Like
spiritual.
like every other relation.
Yeah. So again, think all of you think about your relationships and think about 10 years ago or when you were younger. Who were you having spiritual conversations with? Or who did you learn the most from, or who influenced you the most?
People that I was thinking they were spiritually more mature
Mature.
than me. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Or knew more about the Bible, or
Okay.
knew
Yeah.
more about God.
Okay, but people you trusted.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Exactly. Trust.
Like I trust their knowledge, or I trust
Yes.
their wisdom.
Good. Good. But the important word here, trust, trust, trust. So in our churches, how do we help our people grow in building more trust with more people? If we don't do that, progress will be small. Influence will be small. So we must help more people build more trust. Okay. So I'm going to describe how I believe we can help with some of that, but I want to give you one more opportunity. Any thoughts, questions? Yeah. Anything in the culture, or anything in the culture of the church that you feel like is a barrier to this? Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for Christians?
I don't know. I think if I'm looking at 2015 and 2016, I would say that I was struggling because I was spiritually and emotionally mature, and I had serious problem in trusting other people. But I think that having good examples of godly men who invested time in me, and they show me the way to be transparent and vulnerable, was really important for me.
Good.
And so when it came 2017, I had a really hard time, but that was the moment when the Lord was working in me, and I've opened up about my struggles with my mentor. And so, but because I was looking at him, I saw him before doing that. He was so humble to admit his struggles, his difficulties. So I followed his example, and I trusted, because I felt like he's trusting me. And so now I can trust this person. So
Good.
that was really important. That had a
Good.
huge impact in my life.
Good.
But
Good.
I know that it's not common, and it's hard, because many people are like, okay, oh, this person said that, and then blah 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 blah, I'm going to tell everyone. Or maybe I'm saying, oh, I'm I have this problem, you have to pray, yeah, oh, no, why are you doing that, and like judging. So it's not easy, because people are afraid to be judged, or that people are going to tell others to spread
Yeah.
voices. So that's the main
Okay.
problem.
Good. 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 Antonio, anything else? Nunzia?
Asking for obstacles to building trust in our culture.
So what describe some of those obstacles.
Like on almost on the line of what Danilo was saying. Yeah, it's like relationships. And this is what I've noticed around. A lot of people live like little islands. Probably I already said this in the past.
Yeah.
They're almost like they all live for their own little thing, of little
Yep.
kingdom. And so it's always more difficult to find more people that actually do care about others.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So when I don't feel like you care for me, but reality you're caring for, as long as you are okay, then that doesn't make me feel like I can trust someone, or like me, but I'm talking in general.
Yep.
Some other things, like Daniel said, if you even sometimes, this is a struggle also for me when we have like Bible studies or whatever with groups, and maybe like you want to model that, like the fact that we can actually be ourselves with others, and when they try to correct you, instead of acknowledging that we are all
Yeah.
broken,
Yep. Yep.
somehow they try to. And so like this comes naturally to them, but at the same time I feel like they would not feel free to do the same, because they're afraid maybe the same thing will happen to them if they open up. They will find someone to say, oh, you're crooked, you're broken, oh, too bad for you. I mean, yeah, see, like, I feel like this is an obstacle, like fear of judgment.
Yep.
Then that notion that we talked the other day about the bella figura, which is like,
Yep.
isn't it just
Reputation. Yep.
pleasing others, reputation, pleasing others, keeping
Yep.
up like an image that other people need to see. It's like you have like an avatar that you need to keep up with.
Yep.
And so I think people don't trust as easily anymore.
Okay. Oh, so you think it has changed over time and is even more difficult now?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's changed over time. I think it's in human nature to be afraid of
Yeah, yeah,
Adam and Eve. They covered up. First thing they did,
yeah.
they covered up. So
Good,
I think it's in human
good.
nature.
Yeah. But Bella Figura, you think it has?
Yeah, we as a culture, we are a very high image
Okay.
notion
Yeah.
of reputation. So
Okay.
the more difficult for us, I would say.
It's very helpful. Very helpful. Well, let me give you some suggestions
Yeah.
that I think are important, and
Mhm.
you can process them for your context. But and a few of these things I've said before, but I'll say them again. Um, First one, these things we're talking about, or anything spiritual, obviously, is it's a supernatural thing. It's a supernatural process.
Mm.
So it requires us it requires us praying for these things for our people. So not only praying them for our people, again, Bella Figura, that would not be an idol. That these islands you speak about, Antonio, would, that would change. That people would understand a different way of relating. That people would understand the family identity. Like, so we need to pray for those things, but also actually we need to pray about those things with people.
Mm.
If you're with your small group or even at a meal, before a meal, you can pray in a way that encourages these things. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Even the simple prayer before a meal, or the simple prayer before a meeting, pray in such a way that teaches these things, that encourages these things. But let people hear you pray in that way, because how people hear you pray will change how they pray.
Mm, mm, mm.
Wow.
So model through your praying how you desire for them to pray, how you desire for them to think, how you desire for them to live. Actually model it through your praying. Again, I think Jesus, obviously, when the disciples asked Jesus, teach us to pray, that's what he was doing there. He was like, okay, I'm going to give them a model prayer. So Jesus gave them and gave us basically a model prayer. We can do the same thing. Every time we pray, don't just pray generally, don't just pray simply, pray some of these things. Okay.
Okay.
So pray these things for people, pray these things with people. That's the first one. Remembering it's a supernatural reality.
Mm.
Second thing, teach, teach. You can't talk about these things that we're talking about only a few times in a year.
Mm.
Literally, your people need to be reminded of them very often, just like you and I do. But the example for me, the example for me is my children. Okay. My children, they're good kids. Okay. But they must be reminded of important ideas very often.
Mm.
They're very good kids and they're very motivated, but they still forget. They still
Mm.
need to be reminded very often of the most important things. So, in our teaching, whether that's on Sundays or in a Bible study, our teaching must consistently reinforce these important things. How to live like family, how to build how to build trusting relationships, how to communicate in deeper ways. Like we must teach these things consistently, just like you can imagine teaching a child the same things over and over and over and over again. Okay. So that's the second thing. First one is praying with intentionality, we'll say. Second one is teaching with intentionality. Third one, I love what you said, Danilo, earlier. You talked about those men who modeled something different for you.
Mm-hmm.
Very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So much of Jesus' influence on the disciples came from this, came from his model. Not from the things he said. Some things, were important that he said, but his model, his example, I believe was, just very, very powerful, very, very influencing. So if you want to see these things grow and multiply and spread in your churches, the core people in your church, the more mature people in your church, you must encourage them to model as often as possible, as deeply as possible, to model this way of living. You need to model, but you need others, the core ones, the mature ones. That's why Paul emphasizes so much in his teaching in the New Testament. Paul emphasizes the role of an elder, or people that are like elders or deacons, or basically leaders in the church. It's their model, their example that is so important. Okay. So the question for you would be, okay, if modeling is important, how can we expand that in our churches? And Nunzia, even with what you described those people that knew more, that were more mature, right? In a way, they were modeling for you maturity. They were modeling for you understanding about the Bible and understanding about Jesus. They were modeling. Yes, they were speaking sometimes, but they were also they were also modeling for you. That's why you trusted them. You heard something from them, but you also saw something from them. The modeling. Okay?
Right.
So we're praying with intentionality. We're teaching with intentionality. We're modeling with intentionality. Number 4, experience. Even if somebody teaches you very well and models for you very well, it might not change you until you experience it. Correct?
Sure.
So Danilo, back to your story.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about these older men or these older influences in your life. They were teaching well. They were modeling well for you. But really, things didn't change for you deeply until you had your own experience of something similar. Right? You needed to experience what they were modeling. Nunzia, you needed to experience what those people you described were modeling. You needed to have an experience. So, again, in our churches, how do we create consistent, intentional experiences for more people? And I would say the answer to that's why I feel so strong about the missional community idea, is because it is the place, it is the way for more people to experience these things. You don't get that experience going to a church building and sitting in a church service. You don't get that experience there. So you get another experience, and it's a good experience to go to the church building and to learn and to worship and to be together, on a Sunday. So that's important also, but that's why this missional community idea of living in a community of people that are relating like family, working together on mission, that's why it's so, so important to this idea of experience.
Mhm.
Yes, we need to pray about it. Yes, we need to teach about it. Yes, we need to model it, but we must help people experience it for themselves.
An example of experience to help others to experience could be take with us a person that we have been praying with and pray to,
Good.
teaching to, and be a model for us, for them, and do the same with us to other people. Pray together,
Good.
teach together, be a
Good.
model together in a
Good.
way that they are experienced what we experience
Good.
from others.
Perfect. Perfect. And that is the life or the experience of a missional group, a small group that is living life like this. So Nunzia, real practical example, okay? My wife and I, we host a lot of meals in our home around our table. When we do that, we do it many times where there will be 3, 4, 5 Christians around the table and 2, 3 non-Christians at the table. And then what you said happens there. The Christians are seeing and watching and listening how you love people well, how you build trust, how you ask questions around a meal, around the table. So 2 things are happening. We are building trust with the non-Christians at our table, but we're also training the Christians to do it because they're listening and they're watching and they're learning how to love well, how to build trust well around a simple meal or at a birthday party where we invite a few of our non-Christian friends to the birthday party or to the Easter party or to the Christmas party or to the World Cup party. So we organize lots of meals and lots of parties, which is just an opportunity for relationship. Okay. But it's modeling and it's helping them experience what it looks like to become a friend of sinners. Because if you just teach it, they won't fully understand. They need to see it. So for us, that's around the table. Okay. And then that's going to be my final idea, number 5. What do you say? What do you say around the table? What do you say at the birthday party? What do you say at the World Cup party? What do you say? Because Danilo, like you said previously, most Christians have a difficult time having intentional conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, it's normal. It's true in Africa. It's true in South America, believe me.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure about that.
It's
But
true.
And you know, it's also for us sometimes. So well, at least for me, I would say. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
But the question is, when I'm passionate about something, you know, I would love to tell everyone.
Yeah.
So that the real question is, am I really passionate about God? You know, because if I'm not speaking, if I'm not talking about Him, that there is some. Of course,
Yes.
you know, I don't have to say every single minute. You know the Lord. You know the Lord. You know the Lord. You know, you know Jesus. You know the. But you know, there are always opportunity. There are always things that we can listen and then use in our conversation to talk about the Lord.
Good. So that's what I sent you to look at. I sent you that resource talking about having intentional conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So let me say more about that. That's number 5. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important. Most Christians, American, South American, European, they do not do this well.
Mm-hmm.
But we must train. Again, I see more and more churches training their people to do this, to know how to do this. Okay. Something you said, Danilo, I want to comment on. You talked about the telling. We tell, we speak about things we're passionate about. Yes, that's true. But I think here's the problem with most Christians. They think that it's only about telling.
Mm.
Telling, I believe, comes later.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it often with Jesus. He didn't begin with the telling.
Mm-hmm.
What do we see Jesus begin with? Jesus began with asking and listening.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would tell something. We must do the same.
Mm-hmm.
At a meal, at a party, at a park, at a coffee shop, at work, when we're with people, we must begin these intentional relationships, and building trust comes from us asking about them. We need to ask good questions. We need to ask many questions about them.
Mm-hmm.
And about their story, about their life, about their history, about their past, about the good things in their life, about the hard things in their life, about their parents, about their brothers and sisters, about where they grew up, about what their favorite hobbies are, about how they spend their weekends. Asking good questions, asking many questions, being good listeners, and then we tell. I believe that's the example of Jesus. Asking and listening and then telling. And sometimes the telling is not instantly about Jesus. Sometimes the telling is about our story. It's building trust with them and talking about your family and talking about your parents and talking about where you grew up and talking about your life as a teenager, talking about your life as a university student, talking about your life. And then naturally part of your life is talking about the Jesus part. So Nunzia, I love it's like, wow, when I hear your story is actually perfect. Because you grew up as a serious Catholic person. Wow. There's a lot of beautiful story there to tell. As you just talk about your story, you grew up in this family and they went to church consistently and they did this consistently, and on Easter you did this, and on Christmas you did this, and you went to mass every, 2 times every week, and I don't you share all those details, and then obviously something else happened. Someone else influenced you, something else happened, which took you closer to Jesus and took you into deeper relationship with Jesus. Wow. Your story, I hope you are excited about your story and have confidence in your story, because that could relate so easily with most Italian people.
Yeah. After like even the second or third time that I shared my story, I started to think, wow, I'm blessed that God gave me this story, because I can easily share the gospel. Because even someone asked me difference between Catholic and what the Bible really is teaching, it's super easy. I don't know.
Very easy. Yep.
Yeah.
And you can say, this is what I understood before, and it was good. And God used that time and used those people and used the Catholic Church. But you can always say there was more, there was something more.
I can empathize. I can be sensitive about certain topics.
But everybody has a story. So for me, my father was not a Christian. So it's very easy for me to talk about my family story, my father who wasn't a Christian, how that affected me, how that affected our family. When I was a teenager, I had to secretly go to my youth group.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
There was a time where I was in certain clothes to go play basketball, and I took some other clothes to change into so that I could go to youth group. I had to secretly hide it from my father.
Usually youngers do the opposite.
Exactly. That's why it's such a crazy story. It's like, wow, you had to hide and be secret and change clothes to go to church.
I believe God gave us a different story for a perfect conversation. In everybody have a different background and can empathize with someone else.
Good. Beautiful comment. Beautiful comment. So let me connect that, though, again to why we need a small group like a missional community. Because say you have a coworker or a neighbor, okay, non-Christian or nominally Catholic, okay, they come to a party, okay. Well, if it was only you at the party with them, then they could only hear your story. Well, maybe your story is similar to their story, but maybe it's very different. And it's like, yeah, I heard Nunzia's story, but it's very different from my story, so it doesn't help me. But Danilo, you actually invited him to the party.
Mm-hmm.
And actually Danilo's story was perfect for that person.
Mm.
Don't know, because of where they grew up, how they grew up, something that happened in their life at university. Something in Danilo's story is perfect for that person. Your story was not perfect. Antonio's story was not perfect. Danilo's story was perfect. That's why we need a community of people with many stories, because those different stories will influence different people as they sit at our table, as we eat a meal, as we have a party, as we watch football. Different stories will influence different people in different ways.
Even different characters, no? Like introverts and extroverts and
Good, perfect. Different personalities. Exactly. Some people will come to you, you will begin to build relationship with them, and you're an introvert and they're an extrovert, and something just doesn't quite connect, which is okay. Okay, we need both. But then somebody in your group is an extrovert and has a similar experience, and they make a connection with that person, and that person says, wow, I went to Nunzia's apartment and we had this great meal, and I enjoyed talking with this person and this person, but there was this extroverted person there. His name was Danilo, and his story was amazing. His story was so similar to my story. But what was different is Danilo's story had Jesus at the center of it. But that friend was influenced by Danilo's personality and his story in a way that you can't, in a way that Antonio can't. Different personality, different story. That's why we do it. That's why we live this life together as a community, as a family. Different personalities, different giftings. That's part of it too, Antonio. Different giftings give us different perspective on life and the details. It's connected to our gifting. It's connected to our personality. It's connected to our story. All three of those things, personality, gifting, story, are important in these relationships we're building. But if you're doing it alone, you're limited. It's only your story. It's only your personality. It's only your gifting. You do it with a community of people, many giftings, many personalities, many stories. Okay, but let me finish up that big idea. We want to tell, we want to talk about Jesus. We want to talk about the good news. We want to talk about the amazing reality of being in relationship with Jesus. Yes, that is the goal. But to get to the goal, we must build trust. To get to that goal, we must become friends. To get to that goal, we must ask good questions. We must be good listeners. And then when we hear their story and we hear the broken parts of their story, now we know how to speak good news into the brokenness. Again, I think we see Jesus doing that consistently. He was asking, and then he was listening, and then he was discerning where is the brokenness? Where is the unbelief? What is the proper way to speak good news uniquely into this unique person's life? Does that make sense? We don't see Jesus coming and saying the same thing, right? Jesus didn't come and say the same thing every time to the same people. It was parables, and it was different stories and different examples and always different, right? Always unique. Well, why and how did Jesus do that? He could communicate the good news uniquely because he was listening. He was listening to the unique story of the people he was talking to. If he was talking to religious people, it had a unique religious focus. If he was talking to Gentiles or, these other people groups, we see him change the message. Unique, speaking to unique people. So you can do the same thing there every day, at work, at school, in your neighborhood, at the park. We speak the gospel, we speak the good news uniquely to what people need uniquely at this time in their life. So maybe one of your coworkers has a broken marriage, or they're physically struggling with some sickness or some physical challenge or financial challenge, or so again, something broken, something hurting, some pain in their life. We're listening to find those things in a person's life, so that then we can offer Jesus as the healer. We can offer Jesus as the redeemer. We can offer Jesus as the truth. We can offer Jesus as the hope. We can offer Jesus as the purpose of life. When people are psychologically struggling with depression, anxiety, stress, you hear those things in a person's story, and you can offer Jesus as a better way. But you see how it must be customized. It must be communicated uniquely, like Jesus did, to the unique person's story. Okay. What do you think?
I love it, honestly. Because again, as you were saying, Jesus was very almost like a surgeon of the heart.
Good.
He went exactly to touch the right nerve,
Good.
to the right person. So I
I
agree with
love
that.
good picture, Antonio, like a surgeon.
Yeah.
I like that. That's how we need to learn to relate, and how we need to learn to communicate with people. Diagnosing. Where is the pain, where is the hurt, where is the loneliness, where is the stress, where is the anxiety, where is the unbelief. Diagnosing like a good surgeon, and then offering Jesus as the way.
I mean, yes, I guess
but we can do this. Sometimes it's individual. It's at work with a coworker. It's with a neighbor. So we do that sometimes, but we also need to do it sometimes as a community. Because listen to this, sometimes we will have non-Christians around our table. And we're not speaking directly to them. We're having a conversation with somebody here, and the non-Christian is only listening to the conversation. But it's just what they need. We don't need to have a direct conversation with them. They just need to be hearing this other conversation that our small group is having around the table. Does that make sense? So it's both. It's individual conversations and it's group conversations. And both of those work together to draw people. Nunzia, I'm curious. I'm curious about your story again. Okay. You had your Catholic experience. I'm sure you had some individual conversations, yes, with people.
Yes, many.
But did you also have some group
Right. Many yes, many people, not just many one-to-one conversation, but many environment where I was just watching
Good.
And seeing them how two friends treat each other, or
Good.
couple, very many. Yeah. And something I was thinking, like, the world may think that have a wrong idea about Christians, like everybody is we are all the same. We are all I don't know how to translate. Maybe Danilo and Antonio can help me. Che siamo fatti con lo stampino, che siamo tutti uguali in modo negativo. Come posso spiegarlo?
Wait, you're muted, Danilo.
Danilo,
unmute.
Danilo.
We're Italians, so we speak with our hands. We don't need the
Yeah,
volume.
I'm sorry.
There you go. But I love the animation.
We are made in the same form, but in a negative way. So we are printed in the same way, but in a negative form. Yeah.
Wait, but it's totally the opposite. God made us all different, and the world need to see how we are one body, but everybody is different.
Good. And appreciating and celebrating that uniqueness.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
The one question I have for you, Todd, is that, for example, in Nuncia's example, she had many people speaking to her story, but most of them, if I can remember, they were all missionaries coming from either the United States or full-time missionaries, for that matter. And so what I'm trying to say is this: is like, especially for our culture where we come from this Catholic background. Okay, so where we have the priest, we have the religious worker, and all the others.
Yeah.
Okay. When we do this, when we serve, when we try to model, when we pray, when we follow all this, when we model it, it's like almost people see that, but they take for granted the fact that you're the pastor or you're working full time for the church, so you kind of have to do it.
Yep.
So like what I'm trying to say is, like, how do we get this ingrained that not only religious workers are called to do this, but in all reality, that's what Christians, disciples of Christ,
Yeah.
all called to do, regardless of what their job is, regardless of how much free time they have.
Yep.
Because that's the one excuse they
Good.
use all the time. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm sure in the States too.
Yep. Good. Same thing, I would say, Antonio. It's the same. Again, you've got to, if you want to change a reality, if you want to change the culture, it has to be talked about. But very specifically, like what you just told me was very good. Are you talking about that idea in your church? Like consistently? Like, hey, everybody, this isn't Jesus, this isn't just for professionals. This isn't for the paid ones. This is actually these things we're talking about, living like this, living like family, intentional on. This is for every disciple. This is Jesus' expectation. This is not Antonio's expectation. This is Jesus' expectation. This is not the denomination's expectation. This is Jesus' expectation to live like this, because this is what we see in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is how they lived. So you've got to create a different expectation in the church. Which, how do you change that expectation? By teaching intentionally, praying intentionally, modeling intentionally, experiencing intentionally. It's the same process of how you change it. Let me encourage you. So I lived in the Czech Republic. When I moved there 30 years ago, long time, it was as you described. A lot of missionaries, a lot of paid, that were doing most of the ministry, most of the mission was coming from those people. But today it is very different. There are still some missionaries, but much less, because many Czech people came to Jesus. Okay, so we saw many new Christians, many conversions, but they were discipled well. So they are doing these things now. They are doing most of the work that the missionaries were doing 30 years ago. So one of my closest Czech friends, he's a pastor, helps plant churches. He had a lot of influence from missionaries when he was growing up as a leader and becoming a pastor. Now I love it because he leads one of the largest churches in the country, who has planted the most churches in the country. And he started a network of these churches, and it is almost completely Czech. No foreigners leading it, no foreigners planting these churches, no foreigners. And you go, how did that change? But it changed how I described. They began to change the expectation and say, hey, Czech people, these aren't some outside expectation from America or from somewhere else. This is Jesus' expectation for us as Czech Christians. Czech Christians making disciples. Czech Christians leading missional communities. Czech Christians planting churches. Czech Christians. It took some time. Okay. It was a big shift and it took some time, but it is almost completely changed now, where they don't even really want outside missionaries. So same thing can happen in your churches. But it's going to require praying with more intentionality, teaching with more intentionality, modeling with more intentionality, helping people experience this with more consistency and intentionality. That's how the culture changes. And I've seen it in other churches, I've seen it in other countries, in other cultures. Similar. The praying, the teaching, the modeling, the experiencing. I can tell you stories from Romania where I lived. I can tell you stories right now from Latin America, churches I'm working with in Colombia, Mexico, Chile. How is it changing? Through the prayer and the teaching and the modeling and the experience. So but you can't do it alone. Again, I said this earlier, if you caught it, you need to say, who are the more mature ones in our churches? We've got to get that group of people praying and teaching and modeling and experiencing for the others. That's always the way. The mature ones influencing the babies. It's the biblical way. The Jesus way. It's the Apostle Paul way. It's the Church of Acts way. It's the mature ones praying, teaching, modeling, experiencing for the babies. So even if you have just a few, maybe you look at your church and you go, wow, who are the mature ones? Are they all babies? Maybe you're feeling that. So then you say, okay, who are the more mature babies? How do we get them to become like adults, spiritual adults? So what's the next step for them? But we've got to get 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, like helping work together to influence the babies. But I tell churches, to me, that type of person are your small group leaders. And again, the small group is the context for these things to happen. You support it on Sundays, but it gets worked out and experienced through your small groups living this life together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Final thought, and then I'll let you go, and I need to go. To make progress with these things, you must have a plan. We talked about this before. You've got to have a plan. So I think what the 3 of you should do, and you can pull in a few others to the conversation to say, okay, we need a plan. What is that plan for the next months? And I think the 3 of you with some others can work together to create, I know you're in different cities, so you got to create different plans, but help each other with those plans, because I think you'll do it better together. But then those plans are how you're going to pray, how you're going to teach, how you're going to model, how you're going to experience this. That's what your plans should plan around. Does that make sense? So So that's your homework. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to, the next time we meet, so let's say 1 month, 4 weeks, 6 weeks from now, let's meet again and you describe your plans to me. And I will give you input into your specific plans.
Plans, can you be a little bit more like specific, or what kind of plans you want us to?
Really the plan, the strategy for your churches.
How to put all those 5 steps in place, basically.
Yep. So basically, it should affect how you do some things on Sunday if you have a Sunday meeting. And then it should affect what you do and how you live in your small groups. So those are like the 2 structures to plan. So how are we gonna pray on Sundays, teach on Sundays, model on Sundays, experience on Sundays? Then in our small groups, how are we gonna pray in our small groups, teach in our small groups, model in our small groups, experience in our small groups? And even that 5th idea, how are we going to encourage conversations, intentional conversations on Sunday? And how are we going to encourage intentional conversations in our small groups? Because you know that will affect then how people have conversations out in the world.
Right.
Your people will go to work differently. They will go to school differently. They will talk to their neighbors differently. If they're learning how to do it in their small group and learning how to do it on Sunday. So can we do that? Yeah. So the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, you guys meet again. How far do you live from each other?
Me and Antonio live in the same town.
Yeah, but how far?
Walkable.
How far?
Oh,
walkable.
walkable.
I can walk.
Okay, so you have no excuse.
No, we don't.
You're very close. How about with Danilo?
It's walkable, but it's like 4 hours walk.
4 hours?
It's like an hour drive. Yeah.
Hour drive. Okay. So you could do some of this work over video, but I think it'd be great if you met in the middle.
In person.
Let's meet in Naples.
Yeah, like we did. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yep. Meet in the middle, eat some good food, drink some good coffee.
Good pizza.
Exactly. Enjoy being together, brothers and sisters. Help each other create these plans.
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay.
I have to go. I'm starting the prayer meeting in 1 minute.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Love being with you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you so much.
Yep. I'll send you this video.